Hello, me. It looks like you need to work with Hadoop one more time. Okay, that's fine. You came to the right place. I'm going to show you some artifacts that I've created for you to work with Hadoop in an easy way, of course. But before going into all these details, I would like to bring some context to the table. So probably you know you worked for this company called Hortonworks as a solution engineer back in time. And unfortunately everything ended up when Cloudera, the main competitor, merged with ourselves. But that's not the goal of this video, and I'm going to be focused on one of the multiple products developed by Hortonworks. And in particular, I'm going to be focused on Hortonworks Data Platform, HTP, which was a product based on the Apache Hadoop framework, among other frameworks. At that time, I was helping customers to deploy very demanding projects and use cases, and actually I was not on the deploy phase but more in the designing phase. And so I got a lot of questions from my customers, and many of them I was able to answer very quickly because I had experience on that and I was trained to give those answers. But sometimes they were very technical and very low level, and I had to try things out in an environment. And at Hortonworks we had multiple demo environments. Some of them were deployed or were available in the cloud, and some others were local. The demo environments in the cloud were great, very complete, with a lot of artifacts to showcase many different scenarios of interest to our customers. And some others were local, which was those were good, but they were not very fast to use, basically because they had everything on it, and even though I was using a very powerful laptop, that was not enough. So I had some struggles to work on those questions because I had to spin up an environment, cloud or local environment, and once everything was up and running, then I was able to start working on that question, specific question. So that's one of the points that motivated me to work on what I'm going to present in a moment. But there was something else. It was late 2018 when I was contacted by the IE, Instituto de Empresa, which is a private education and international entity where I was part, and actually I'm part at the time of making this video. I'm still part of the faculty member for the Master in Business Analytics and Big Data. And so I was contacted to deliver the Hadoop course, which is part of the Master. And the experience was great. I had a lot of fun with my students, and we were doing a lot of things. There was theory, but there were also labs and hands-on sessions, which I believe is what people want to do. So theory is fine, but the good thing is when you put everything into practice. Well, so I struggled to give my students something that they could use at home and play around with at their own pace, because actually Hadoop is something that can be really big. So you can rely on multiple frameworks for achieving multiple use cases, and that's not very easy to deploy in one local machine by one single person. But the point is, what I was teaching was very simple at the beginning. It got complicated over time, but when it came to Hadoop at the very beginning, it was the core. So that was the second motivation for building what I'm going to present in a moment. Because I thought, would it be nice to have this stuff in your own computer? Because when it comes to Hadoop, it's just a matter of downloading the binaries from the official website. So Hadoop is open source, so that's something that you have available for free on the internet. But the point is, I wanted my students to be focused on the functional side and not in the operational side. I don't want them to learn how to install Hadoop because they were not going to do it. And at this time I was playing around with Docker. Docker is a really nice technology and tool that allows you to define cutting-edge architecture for very scalable systems. But it is also a technology that helps you to build testing and development environments. And that was the usage that I wanted to give Docker in this endeavor. Yeah, I mixed both worlds, and after some days working on it, I came up with what I'm presenting here in this website. I shared the result, the outcome of that hard work, and you are able to download a Docker image with Hadoop 3, but only the framework, only the core. And so this cannot be compared to any commercial Hadoop distribution because obviously those are much more powerful and they include some enterprise class features that are not going to be available here. So this is what I highlight in this note, in this disclaimer. Don't use this for production. This is for testing environments and training purposes. And actually it's so naive that if you start adding stuff into the container as if you were using a production environment, and at some point you kill the container, all the data is gonna be removed. And this is intended because the point is you can play around with this as you want, and if you screw things up, that's fine, that's expected, because if next time you start a new container, everything is gone. Everything is gone. So you will start from the scratch and you will have to do everything from the very beginning. And that's what I expect from people using this for training purposes or for training purposes. Okay, so even though this is something that you can use right away, if you are curious enough to look into the whole artifacts, and if you want to customize this thing to fit your needs, you have all the collaterals that I used to build the image. Just click in this link and you will get access to the Docker file. And if you start looking around this GitHub repository, you will get the rest of the stuff, the files, the configuration files, and all those things that I used to build the image. And actually you have the build command that you have to use to build the image. So very easy, copy and paste after modifying your stuff, and you will come up with a new Docker image completely customized. If you only want to use it, the only thing you have to do is to pull the image from Docker Hub with this command. I will do it in a moment. And once you have the image locally deployed, you will be able to run containers based on that image with this command. And the good point is you will have access to the different Hadoop components, such as the resource manager, name node, and data node. So those have web UIs, and those are reachable through a TCP port, and those TCP ports are mapped to the local machine. And so you will see those commands while I'm doing the demo, so you can see the logs just to understand when the whole thing is up and running. You can get access into the container itself to run some commands, for instance the HDFS CLI, and once you are done you can kill the container itself. So once I run the container, I will do some tests against HDFS. You will see how to display things, how to upload files, and so yeah, the typical kind of things you do with HDFS. I will go through the different UIs, and finally I will run a map reduce job, and this is going to be taken from this website. So this is part of the documentation for setting up a single node cluster, which is what I'm providing through the Docker image. But here specifically in this link, you will see how to run a MapReduce job against some files available in the HDFS. I will come back later to this. Cool, now we are ready to start with the demo, and you will see everything in action. I have a couple of terminal windows that I'm going to use during the demo. First thing we have to do is to pull the image from Docker Hub with this command. In my case, I already downloaded it, and so it's gonna be really fast. Given that the Docker image is 2 GB size, in your case it could be slower than this, and it should be slower than this actually. Once everything is downloaded, you can check that everything is properly available in the system by running this command. This will bring you something like this. You have the name of the Docker image, the tag, and some additional stuff. This is a hash, this is the time where this image was created, and finally the size. Now you're ready to run a Docker container with this Docker image, and this is the command you need to run. So we need to copy and paste line by line. Probably this is not ideal, but it is much easier to understand by giving this format than adding everything together in one single line where you are not going to understand pretty much. So, long story short, we are going to run a Docker container based on this Docker image, the Hadoop 3 vanilla Docker image. Once we terminate the Docker container, everything is going to be removed just to release resources. We are going to give a name, the host name a name, and the name is going to be Hadoop. The Docker image is going to be called Hadoop 3, and then we start mapping ports. If I don't remember bad, this is the TCP port for the resource manager, and so the rest of the components are mapped in the rest of the arguments. We hit enter, and so the container is starting. If you want to follow the process app, you can run this another command, and this is going to give you some messages about what's going on underneath. So as you can see, it's starting Hadoop 3 vanilla 3.2 blah blah blah, and you have the different stages or steps. First, if loading, it is loading the environment variables for Hadoop, replacing some stuff in configuration files, starting the SSH server, the HDFS subsystem, which relies on name nodes, data nodes, and this secondary name node. Then you have yarn, and finally the history server daemon. So if you get to this line, that means everything is up and running. So you are ready to go. You have a Hadoop environment for yourself in your local environment. As you can see, it started very fast. So maybe you are asking, why is this that fast? Probably the computer Raul is using is super fast. So I have something here that I would like to show you, and this is gonna be over here, documents, okay, if I type this, so this is my system already. It's a laptop running an i5 Intel CPU. It is not one of the latest CPUs, so I think it's probably 5 years old or something. It has only one CPU with 4 cores and 8 GB size, and finally has a half terabyte disk, and this is a spinning disk, which means it's not that fast. Okay, cool. So we have the whole thing up and running, and if you want to go inside the container, you need to type this command. We are going to do it. There we go. We have a bash running inside the container. So if I type hostname, you will see that it is Hadoop, the hostname that I mentioned before. And we are in the Hadoop home folder. So that means from this point, I have access to all the binaries. Okay, so I can run Hadoop commands, HDFS, MapReduce commands, and all those things. I'm going to start with HDFS, which I believe is the easiest to start with. So the first thing that you would like to do is to list the contents. And in order to do so, you need to use the -ls command. So HDFS, DFS is something you have to use all the time when you are interacting with the distributed file system from the user perspective. Then you provide the command -ls, lists directories and files, and finally you need to provide a path, and this is the root folder. This should retrieve all the contents at the root level. There we go. So we have a TMP folder and an user folder. So you can go deeper in this, and maybe you can be interested in displaying what's inside the user folder. And there you go. There is only one folder, and it is called root, which is linked, or it is the home directory for the root user in the Hadoop environment, and in particular in the distributed file system for Hadoop environment. Okay, so we could create new folders. So imagine you want to create a folder called test at the root directory. So if you type HDFS, DFS, you will display this help message. And as you can see, there are the different commands you can use from the command line. So you have the -ls, the one we used before, but you have some others like -mkdir to create folders. And this is what I'm going to do. But as you can see, there is a whole bunch of commands to tail files, change permissions, copy files, bring to the local system, copy from the local to the distributed file system. So there are many different options. So you can do all the things that you want to test out against HDFS can be tested in this local environment. So as I mentioned before, I'm going to create a folder called test under the root directory. This is going to be the command, and now I can list contents from the root folder, and there you go. As you can see, it created this folder with the root user, which is the current user. Actually, this is something you can modify with the Hadoop user environment variable, and Hadoop is the group inside Hadoop to have this full kind of permission system similar to the Unix permission system within Hadoop. Now I'm going to create a file inside this folder, and it's going to be an empty file. In order to do so, I'm going to use the -touch command, which is displayed here as well. So this is gonna be it: HDFS DFS -touch test empty file. Cool. So that means everything is fine. And finally, if I list contents in the test folder, you will see that now there is a new file called empty file. And so if I try to display the contents by using the -get command, this one, you will realize that there is nothing inside. -get empty file, and there is nothing inside, which is expected as the size is 0. Okay, cool. Before going into the web UIs, I'm going to run this example in here. So this is the documentation to set up the single node cluster, and this is something that I followed to create this Docker image. But additionally, in this standalone operation, you have an example of a MapReduce job that you can run in your cluster. So this is for running the operation locally, running MapReduce locally, but you can reproduce this in cluster, Hadoop cluster setup. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is to copy all these configuration files, XML configuration files, into a folder called input, and then you are going to run this command. This is assuming the home directory for the user running the job. Remember, in our case, we are running, or we are creating things as the root user, so that's gonna be the current Hadoop user. So this folder needs to be under user root folder. So before moving forward, I'm going to create that folder. So it's gonna be -mkdir user root input. There we go. And we are going to copy all these files. So first of all, let's check it out. There we go. All these files need to go under this folder in the distributed file system, Hadoop distributed file system. So before doing so, let's display what's inside this folder. You will see it is empty. And now we are going to copy all those files. hdfs dfs -put, which is the command to upload folders on files into hdfs, and the destination folder, which is this one. Okay, so if everything went well, if I list the folder one more time, you will see that files are over there. There we go. This is good. And we are ready to execute this command as it is. So it's going to run Hadoop, and it's going to use this jar to specify the job that is going to be executed. And actually the job that is going to be executed is grep, and grep is going to go over the files in this input folder. The output is going to be provided in this output folder, which doesn't exist at this moment. It will create it. It will be created by the job itself, and this is the grep expression that is going to be run against these files in here. So if we click or we hit enter, this will start up, and you will start getting the message, the typical messages that you usually get when you run MapReduce jobs in a Hadoop cluster, because actually this is a Hadoop cluster, but it is called a pseudo cluster in the sense that it's a cluster running in one single machine, which is not a cluster itself. Okay, so you will see that it's doing the map phase, and once it's done, it will start the reduce phase. And so if I don't remember bad, there are a couple of iterations, a couple of MapReduce running. The first one finished, and now it's gonna start a new one. So let's see how long it takes, and now we're going to check the web UI, and with the web UI you will see everything in action. Okay, so this is done. Let's check the output folder, hdfs dfs -ls user root, and first let's see what's inside. Okay, so you see there is a new folder called output, which has been created by the job, and inside this folder you will see first of all a file saying that the job was successful, size 0, so that means nothing is going to be inside, and the results of the job are going to be stored in this file. So next thing we are going to do is to display the contents of this file by providing this command cat, concatenation of this file with anything else, which means it's going to concatenate the contents of this with nothing, which is the self file contents. There you go. This is what grep extracted from all those files: DFS admin, DFS replication, and so basically those are parameters to configure a Hadoop cluster in terms of the DFS subsystem. Okay, it worked. So as you can see, you can use this Docker image to test HDFS and to test MapReduce. Well, what else you can do with this? So if we go back to this resource, the Docker Hub website, you will see that this link takes us to the Docker file itself. And so you have plenty of information about how this was built, and in particular you have information about the ports that has been exposed. So 8088 is about the resource manager, and 19888 is about the MapReduce job history. So let's give this one a try first of all. So we do localhosts 8088. This is the resource manager web UI, and so in here you can see the two MapReduce jobs that were executed, and you can see that they were successful. They were able to finish on time, and you have the timing, and you can dig into the application itself. So more statistics on here, the amount of resources were used, and all this stuff. And actually, while it is running, you can go inside the this information about the application itself, and you can follow the execution app. The only downside is some of the links are using the host name. If you click here, what is going to happen is, first of all, it's not going to be available because this map is not, this port is not mapped. But if for some reason you map this port, you are not going to be able to reach out to this host name because it doesn't exist in your DNS subsystem, nor etc host files. So that's okay. The only thing you have to do is to first map this TCP port to the local host, and then replace the URL, or actually the host name in this URL from Hadoop to localhost. That's the only thing you have to do. Okay. This is when it comes to the resource manager, but also you can browse the name node, and this is really handy because people are not very used to the command line, and sometimes they are more used to user interfaces. So that means they can first of all get all the information about the name node. You can see the capacity, the number of blocks, and everything that I usually cover in the theory classes. So the data nodes, that obviously we only have one, no failures, if there are snapshots, information about the startup progress. And so usually in production this is containing very useful information because sometimes there are some checkpoints, and when you are starting HDFS app, this phase usually takes longer, and you can see the progress of that stage. But you have access to the utilities, and actually you can browse the file system, and we have exactly the same as we saw before in the command line. So we can go inside the test folder, the empty file, but what I'm going to do right now is to display the output of the output of the results that we got from the MapReduce job we did before. This is user, this is root, and output, and this is one. This is the one, and we can head or tail the file. So we're going to head the file, and the contents are object. So this is not going to be
very useful. But what we can do is to download the file, and as you can see, this is not working out because it is using the host name. So you need to replace this by localhost, and the file is going to be there. Say file, and if I come back to the command line and I leave the container, now I can have access to the file I downloaded, and we have exactly the same as we were displaying before inside the container and inside the HDFS. Okay, so this is all, and so I think this is going to be enough for me to remember and to refresh everything that I did, and from this point on I can start doing some additional stuff on top, which is gonna be great for sure. Okay, bye bye and take care.